Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Managing with Mind and Heart podcast. I am one of your hosts, Nash Sr., that is Mike Nash, and with me is...
Your other host, your other Nash, Ethan Nash here today. Good to be with you, everybody.
I was trying to get you to say Nash Jr. I was really wanting you to say that when I said Nash Sr. That would have been...
Yeah, I'm not going to say that.
Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we are going to talk today about a concept that's a little hard to visualize without visuals, but I think we can do it. We're going to talk about organizational charts in terms of who talks to whom about what. Lines of communication.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to start, Ethan, by just asking you a question about a subject that we've talked about here before. We're talking about psychological safety and morale, all these things. We often talk about the open door policy, the idea that managers need to have an open door policy. So why do managers need to keep their office doors open? I'm not sure I'm understanding.
Yeah. Well, for airflow, for fire codes, to be able to yell across the office without having to stand up and talk to somebody. All those good reasons, of course.
Thank you. I think that completes our podcast. That's really helpful.
There it is.
No, really. Let's get into it. Ethan, how would you describe what is an open door policy when we're asking managers to have an open door policy? What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, as your famous line goes, it really has nothing to do with doors, right? We work with a lot of people in the field that don't sit in offices, that don't have doors for their jobs. Okay, we're not talking about doors here, folks. I think at the end of the day, with an open door policy, what we're talking about is a combination of two key pieces. It's your availability, being available and responsive, which, by the way, is one of our top 15 management skills. And it's also about your approachability, or AKA the psychological safety that you've built with your team members. So are you generally available? Can they get a hold of you, whether through a call coming up to you? And do they also feel comfortable coming to you and approaching you with things? Those two things together is what creates the quote unquote open door policy.
Good. Yeah. Let's emphasize that because that's really important. It's funny because I actually had an organization who they required their managers never to close their doors because of the open door policy, which was missing the idea. And it was really frustrating because you literally couldn't have a private conversation in your office because your door had to be open all the time. But I like the way you put that. We're really talking about I can generally find you. It doesn't mean 24/7, but in general, I can get to you somehow, whether that's through a Zoom call or a phone call or in person. And emotionally and psychologically, I feel safe. I can talk to you. I'm not afraid of you. Good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we are introducing a weird concept here called the half open door policy. Now, here's the bottom line. Who should have an open door policy for whom when you're looking at an org chart? I'll throw that at you, Ethan. Who has an open door policy for whom?
Right. So again, coming back to the question of who should be talking to whom about what? Who do we have an open door policy to? There's different levels to look at this from. I would say that in general, if I am a manager, I need to have an open door policy, aka availability and psychological safety, with my direct reports. Right. And I think there's also something to be said about with my manager as well. My manager could feel free to talk to me, but of course.
Oh, I see. You're going both directions on the org chart here.
Yeah. Just sticking with kind of org chart down. Yes, my people, my employees can have an open door policy with me.
Right. And that really means, and a little bit of a side note, right? That means you can come talk to me about anything. And that doesn't, when I say anything, I don't mean I'm not going to have some boundaries, right? I mean, I don't necessarily want to, talk about things that seem super personal or make me uncomfortable, et cetera, et cetera. I can have my own boundaries, but I'm not going to tell employees, don't talk to me about this and don't talk to me about this. They need to understand that they can come bounce things off me. That's open door policy.
Yeah, I mean, maybe another way to look at that, it's not necessarily about, I mean, this is how I see it. It's not necessarily about what we're talking about. It's that I'm available to talk about things. So, like you said, there are maybe parameters of, maybe there are things you're not going to talk about because you've said, hey, that's just not a conversation I'm willing to have anymore in this office, right? We're not going to triangulate. I mean,
Exactly.
whatever that might be.
Right.
Um, but I do think that at the end of the day, I mean, coming back to your kind of maybe setting boundaries, like it's totally fine to have kind of, hey, this is heads down time for me, like from 2 to 4 on this day. I am heads down working on stuff. I won't be available. Right. It's okay to set those boundaries,
Absolutely.
but it's a general come talk to me when you need to
Yes.
type of thing.
Yes, that's exactly right. There should be freedom is really what I'm looking for here, and not having the employee not having to second guess themselves. So good. That's open door policy, and that again is a part of creating morale and that trust and respect between managers and employees. But then we get into this half open door policy, and this is where I think this gets problematic in a lot of organizations. The idea is, as an upper manager, I need to have an open door policy for the people that directly report to me, but I need to have a half open door policy for the people who report to them, which means there are certain conversations that I am not going to have with my direct reports. Direct reports. And that's really
Mm-hmm.
important for the health of an organization. And when that's not maintained, you get all sorts of frustration and confusion and resentment. And we'll talk about some of those dynamics here in a minute.
Yeah, yeah. I want to just dig into that just a little bit more to make sure that I understand and everybody listening understands. So just correct me wherever I'm wrong here. So, imagining that I am a maybe director level. The people I manage other people is what
Right.
we're talking about here. What we're saying is that the 2 levels down, I have to be careful about the type of conversations I'm willing to field from 2 levels down.
Yes.
And I will also say, and I know that you've seen this as well, this can feel very counterintuitive to a lot of organizations. I mean, I know we've kind of chafed with some leaders before on helping them understand why this actually creates an unhealthy system. And I just feel that there's often this idea that we want to have open communication in this organization, right? And we don't want the power to get in the way of what conversations people can have and can't have. We should all be free to talk with each other. And that I actually agree with a lot of like that comes from a very good place. And there's a lot of that I would agree with, but it comes down to those types of conversations, not that you can't have any conversation with 2 levels down.
Yeah.
So I put that to you to maybe play with or expand on.
That's really a good way of putting it, actually. And let's look at it this way. Look, to maintain open, healthy communication, though, we also have to have boundaries. And so let's look at, for example, these are the kinds of things, and you play with me on this one, Ethan, but these are the kinds of things that I would hope that a director level would be open to talking about 2 levels down, right? I mean,
Mhm.
let's start with the obvious stuff. Hey, did you watch the Super Bowl last Sunday?
Yeah.
Yeah, obviously. Let's talk about that, right? I mean, let's be friendly.
Right.
Let's be relational, right?
Yeah.
Hey, I've got this idea I wanted to just throw at you because you're an executive. And this is sort of a broader thing about the organization. I've been thinking about kind of our social media presence. And I wanted to just throw this at you or, bounce this off you, right? So, right. I mean, that's the kind of thing you would hope that employees would be able to go 2 levels up, right? Or
Mhm.
more, right? And have conversations. So, can you think of any other sort of
Well, I can think of a lot of like scenarios, and I'm actually not so sure about all of them and how they, would be handled. But so one thing I can imagine is I'm an employee. I actually have some feedback about the executive team in general. And there's a level in between me and the executive team. I think there's something to be said about a culture where I am free to go up to that executive team member and with respect, say, hey, I have some thoughts on how you can get better at distributing information that we might need to know. There's nothing there that I would think, hey, go through your manager first who will bring it to me.
Yep.
Right?
No, yeah, there's others like that. And then here's one more that gets us now close to the line. That because in a moment, of course, we'll be talking about the other category of conversations we shouldn't be engaging in with two levels below. I need to talk to you because I'm really struggling with my boss. And I've tried. I've had conversations. We've tried different things. It's not
Mm.
working. And we don't need to spend too much time on this today, but I just want to say you can't not have that be an option for employees as a
Mhm.
last resort because otherwise they feel trapped, they're stuck, and things aren't going to go well. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Right. It's coming down to exactly how you put it. Ensuring nobody ever feels like they are stuck and held captive, quote unquote, not literally, hopefully, held captive by one person, right? That's why the system always is going to be stronger than one individual because nobody is at the whims, hopefully, of one individual that might be misbehaving in a
Right.
sense. So,
Right.
yeah.
I always have an out. And that out could be, that place I go could be HR. I mean, there might be designated place for this, but I should be able to go to my boss's boss when things truly are not working between me and my boss. And now that gets fuzzy and gray, but we can dig into that maybe some other time. But what that does is gets us now to the other side of the equation here. What are those conversations that if I was the director level person and somebody was skipping their manager and coming up to me,
Hmm.
that I would need to have what we call a half open door policy at that point, which means I'm going to probably have a little bit of a conversation to find out what's going on here. But pretty quickly, I'm going to say, no, I'm not the one you should be talking to. You need to go back and talk to your boss, right?
Right, right. And so I'm guessing why you're calling this a half open door policy because it's not an immediate, as probably with anything, it's not an immediate. No, don't come talk to me. I'm not your manager. It's oh yeah, we have you're able to come talk to me, and I'm feeling out if this is the conversation that I should be having or not. And so
Yes.
it's half open. It's open for you to stick your head in,
Right.
and if it seems like the right conversation, I'll open up the whole door for you to come in.
Right. Right.
Metaphorically
And
speaking, here, yeah.
no, that's good. That was actually not even a stretch. That worked. And the more as a director level person, a person that's in sort of the C suite or has an employee or managers who manage other people, the more they maintain those boundaries around certain topics, the more that becomes embedded into the organization in a really healthy way. But on the other hand, of course, what you allow, you teach, right? Every time I let my manager's employee skip the manager and come to me and talk about stuff they shouldn't be talking to me about, every time I do that, I create a more deep groove toward me from those people. And the bottom line is the more I do that, the more the manager who reports to me feels like their legs are kicked out from under them and they feel disempowered and they don't feel supported. And I've even had managers say to me, I don't even know why I'm here to manage. If my manager is going to just jump in and take care of stuff every time my employees complain, why am
Right.
I even here?
Right. Absolutely. I mean, you're disempowering that manager if we don't discriminate between the conversations we should be having and shouldn't be having. And again, I mean, all of this is very nuanced, but I think that once again, we hear things like, "Oh, we're kind of yeah, we have different levels in the hierarchy, but we're kind of a flat organization. So all of this, all these conversations can happen with anybody." And I think it's kind of missing the point. It's not about stopping the free flow of information and communication. It's about empowering a manager to be able to do their job to the best of their ability.
Yep.
It has nothing to do with flat organizations or 3D organizations. I don't know what you'd put it,
What
but
is what is a 3D organization?
I don't know. I don't know.
All
Just
right.
not a flat one. Mm.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so obviously when I'm managing a group of people, I'm not going to always make decisions they like, and I'm not going to always be able to say yes to an employee when they have a request, and I'm not going to always, X, Y, and Z, right? And if they get to skip me every time and get a quote kind of a hearing
Mhm.
and get an intervention and get someone problem solving above my head, I just start emotionally shutting down. I really in many ways stop volunteering my heart and my brain as a manager because I know
Mhm.
I'm just going to get the rug pulled out from under me whenever someone doesn't like what I've said or what I've done. The other thing on that is the manager's manager. I get why they're saying yes to these conversations, right? It like I think you said this earlier. It just doesn't feel right to not have a fully open door policy. So I feel like I got to
Mhm.
solve everything that comes to my door, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And most people come from a good, genuinely kind place of, hopefully, hey, I'm in a management leadership position because I want to help. And this is my ability to help. But I mean, you can imagine a scenario where, and we'll get into more of these, but you can imagine a scenario where somebody goes to their direct manager. Hey, look, I would really like to take these 2 weeks off, for example, right here. And the manager says, that's right in the middle of our like busy product season. I can't grant 2 weeks then. And so then they get upset about that and they go to the level above you, your boss. And they say, "Hey, I spoke with my manager. They said I can't take 2 weeks off here, and I don't feel like that's right or fair. You know, what do you think about that?" And they say, "Oh, gosh, we could probably make that work for you. We could. You know what? I think yeah. You know what? Don't worry about that. Schedule this 2 days off. I'll speak with your manager. I'll make sure it's all good. Appreciate you coming
Ouch.
to me."
Ouch. Big ouch.
Hmm.
You know what? Let's stay on that. Do you mind? Let's stay on that specific example because there are so many important nuances on this one. First of all, in this imagined story, let's say that in general, the upper manager there generally believes that the manager that reports to him or her is doing a good job. Okay. They generally trust this manager that reports to them. So let's assume that. Let's assume that the person that is being talked to and brought into this isn't already suspicious about this person's skills or motives. Okay.
Hmm.
So your example there was, man, that person just took it and solved it and basically contradicted,
Yeah.
which is the worst case right there. It's like,
Undermine their decision completely.
yeah, and not only now are you demoralizing the manager below you, you're creating a path. Whenever you don't like something that this manager says, just come to me, right? But let's get more nuancy because when we use these scenarios in the workshops, even after we teach this, it's so interesting. We'll teach all these concepts and then we'll give them scenarios, and the people acting out that upper manager, they continually jump back in and kind of cross the lines. So here's another thing that person might do besides other than just completely solving it. They might say, "Oh, they're not letting you have that time off. You know what? I'm going to get you two together and we'll have a
Mm.
conversation." Ouch. Or they say something like, "Why don't you go back and try this approach? And why don't you go back and try this approach? Why don't maybe you can, move them by blah blah blah, right?
Mhm.
Or let me go look into it even." See, all of those, if you trust the manager, are the opposite of what you should say, which is, Ethan, what would you want me to say if I was your boss and your employee came to me and said, Ethan won't let me have these 2 days off? And I trusted you, right? What would you hope I would say to that employee?
Think I would hope you would say something along the lines of, maybe you're asking a question like, "What did your manager say?" What did she, what were the reasons? And yeah, give those reasons, and then maybe say something like, "Well, look it, that's your manager's area, and so that's not really anything to come talk to me about, right? That's not for me." It's a little messy, but I
Yep.
think just generally saying that's not for me.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, what we ask upper managers to do when they're in one of those situations where the thing coming to them feels like it is in the scope of what that manager should be deciding, even if I don't have the whole thing, the whole story, even if I don't totally understand all of it, but it's within the scope of their job and I generally trust them,
Mhm.
I'm going to ask very few questions. I'm going to just make sure I understand what's coming at me here. Okay, so you asked for some time off and they said no.
Mhm.
That's it. I'm not going to say, well, what were the reasons and tell
Mhm.
me what else is going on, because now I'm managing the situation. The bottom line is here is I'm not going to jump in and manage this situation because I'm deciding right up front this is not within my scope of management. And if I take it on, I'm communicating something to the employee that I shouldn't be communicating. And I'm also communicating that I don't trust the manager. So my bottom line is once I get my head around the basics of what we're talking about, my next sentence is going to be something around, hey, that's not something that I'm able to work with you on. Your manager's job, of course, is to maintain the right coverage and they need to schedule, and you're going to have to work this out with them.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's spot on. I'm also wondering if, so again, we'll stick with the example of looking for those 2 weeks off in the middle of their busy season. They come to you, skip a level. They won't give me this time off. Can I have the time off?
Right.
That's not for me to handle. Sorry. And what if you then at that point, actually know as a director, oh, I wonder if the manager missed the fact that we have this other department that we've had an agreement with that they will come in and cover people during this time when people want to take time off. And by the way, our culture is generally oriented towards people being able to use their PTO whenever they want.
Mhm.
And so you're kind of understanding there might be a cultural miss here. That doesn't mean you then can't go and talk to the manager that reports to you and just say, "Hey, I just want to let you know X, Y, and Z person brought this to me. Here's what I said. I said it's totally not my thing to handle with them, right? They need to handle that with you. So I just want you to know I didn't jump in, I didn't coach. We're all good there. And I actually want to talk about this. I just wanted to make sure that you were maybe aware that there is some coverage that we could find in these situations. So it's not. I guess I'm saying that maybe it's more of a statement than a question here, but I guess I'm saying that it doesn't mean you then can't do your job to manage that manager
Right.
behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually one step closer to this other side of the coin. But I'm glad you talked about that. That's a nuancy piece. Like you don't think the manager necessarily did something horrible. You're not, you're still gonna communicate trust. But I love that. I'm going to go have a back channel conversation with that person, with that manager, just to make sure, hey, are you aware of this? And, we want to make sure our culture, blah, blah, blah. Now, if they are aware and they've got good reasons, I'm going to really communicate to them that I trust them. Hey, I'm not second guessing you. Just want to make sure that, you got the whole story, but good job.
Yeah.
Now the bottom line, what you said there, though, it's key. You didn't say any of that to the employee.
Right.
That's key right there.
Right. You're not saying, yeah, I mean, but I'll have a conversation with
Yes.
them anyways. You're not saying that. No.
They might have missed this, type thing, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. And so, yeah, keep running with this. I mean, are there other scenarios we can look at here?
Yeah, we could do a lot more scenarios in both of those first two categories and we won't today. But the first category was, really clearly it's in the manager's scope and I don't have any concerns. It's just I'm going to trust the manager. I'm not going to get into this. The category you just brought up with is a little bit more tricky where I'm still going to support the manager, but there might be some information that I want to get to the manager or check in with them on later. But I'm still going to have, in both those two cases, it's the same message to the employee. The third one's different. And this is where the employee comes to me and they really are telling me something that does concern me about the manager's decision or about the
Hmm.
manager themselves. So, a real life scenario years and years ago was, hey, I've gone to my manager. My partner has this illness that's pretty chronic. I need to spend another half hour in the morning at home before the caregiver comes in. And my manager said, there's no way we could do that. And, when this director heard this story from the manager's employee, they were super alarmed because it just didn't make any sense in the culture of that organization and probably even legally that the manager could just shut that down like that. And so at that point, you're not going to say something like, well, I trust your manager. I'm not going to get involved. That would be pretty damaging and pretty dangerous, right?
Hmm.
So you got to do something different there. You want to take a stab at that first? Like, let's say it happens to you. I've skipped my manager. I've come to you and I'm telling you something pretty alarming. My manager won't let me take care of my sick partner.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'd approach it from a few kind of core principles here with this. And we've circled around them, but just to call them out, like, first off, you still aren't problem solving or managing the employee's situation there, right? Principle number one, if you will.
Right.
And I'm not going to throw the manager under the bus in any way. I'm not going to say, well, that was, yeah, they just, no, that was a terrible decision, right?
They said that. They said, what? I can't believe it.
Right. So don't problem solve or manage the situation. Don't throw the manager under the bus. And then besides that, I think there's kind of, when they bring this thing to you, there's two general questions. What specifically did you say, or what specifically did you ask and why? Which in this scenario, you kind of already know that. And what specifically was the response? So basically, you're asking a few questions to understand the situation further. And then once that happens, I'm still not expressing negativity towards the manager. And then if it does at that point really seem like a pretty big issue, I think I would say something like, "Hey, look it, I'm gonna look into this, and somebody's gonna get back to you on it."
Yes.
And just leave it at that. No further conversation. Just we'll look into it. Somebody's gonna follow up with you,
Yeah.
right? And then, I mean, we could talk about what you would then the next step you would take, of course, having that conversation with the manager. But
Yeah. That's
yeah, I mean, I think that's as simple as that. They're still short conversations. I'm not digging into it a whole lot with them.
and it's really tempting to dig in more and more and more and more at that point. And I love the way you said that. It's a really short. I mean, it's empathetic, and you're not being cold, but hey,
Mhm.
you know what? Let me go find out what's going on. I'll dig into that. Someone will get back to you. That's all you need, and that's very different than the first two scenarios. Remember, the first two scenarios, you're not saying I'm going to look into it at all.
Right. Yeah. And one question I have is that follow up, right? Again, you're communicating to that employee, somebody will follow up with you. Would you think that the best case scenario is that person's direct manager is the one that follows up with them, as opposed to you, who they skipped a level to, closes that loop?
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
You are going to go do some coaching with the manager. You're going to find out what happened. Now, let's keep in mind you are only hearing the employee's version. Like, right, that's always important that we keep that in mind. That's one of the reasons we're not going to like take sides and throw anyone under the bus, right? So, I might go to the manager and they might have a completely different story about what happened and what was communicated. So, who knows, right? But if the manager generally agrees that the conversation happened the way the employee said it happened, you're going to do some coaching and you're going to say, look, that's not the answer. That's not the right answer. And let's talk about what you should have done and why. And let's make sure you train the manager and let's make sure that never happens again. And manager, would you please go make this right? You need to go back and be humble and explain that you were wrong and make this right. Because now there's an opportunity for the manager and the employee to have some reparative work right there, as opposed to you coming in and delivering the good news, which is, no, you really do get to stay home and take care of your partner, right? Suddenly you've sort of, again, disempowered that manager and you've cut off the opportunity for them to get reparative work between them.
Yeah, that totally makes sense to me. There can sometimes be maybe the issue that comes up around the request for confidentiality, which can be a little weird in these scenarios, but I've seen it happen where it's like somebody brings something to you that their manager did or said to them, and you've determined that the manager likely responded inappropriately. But the employee is saying, can we please keep this confidential? I don't want them to know I'm talking to you. I mean, there's kind of two routes. I mean, A, you can't really help problem solve that situation and keep it confidential at the same time if it's specific to that employee. The other situation is maybe it's more wide, like it's more like a team thing,
Mhm.
in which case you plausibly could keep it confidential. But how do you think about confidentiality in that term? Is there a case to be made that the director that's hearing this stuff should be clear, like, I can't, I don't think it's something I can keep confidential. I need to be able to talk about this. Or would you maintain those lines? Yeah, how do you think about that?
It's probably the hardest part of managing when it comes to he said, she said, and confidentiality. And I can't actually give the examples because I would be breaking confidence. It's really, really tricky. Um, I think you actually divided that up really well. If I'm coming to my manager's manager about something that happened directly between me and my manager, or the way they treat me specifically, or the thing they said to me that they should have said, or a decision I didn't like that was about me, there's no way I can problem solve that without using the name of the employee.
Right.
Because I can't go to the manager and say, well, I can't really tell you who said this, but somebody feels like you're not treating them well. That just doesn't make any sense. And it just frustrates everybody. And there's no good that comes from that. So I think that would be a conversation with the employee to say, look, I would like to help you with this. I can't help you and not bring your name into this. Now, what I can do, if you don't want anyone to know you're talking to me, is I can maybe do some coaching with you about how you might want to solve this on your end, right?
Mm.
Or I might refer you over to our HR specialist who helps with this kind of thing, right? And they can help you figure out some words and some phrases and an approach. But I can't fix this unless I can use your name. But then the second thing you said was really good. If they're coming to you in more of a general, broad, hey, my man, this is actually one I had heard a couple of years ago. Our manager cusses in staff meetings quite often. It makes me uncomfortable. Okay, now I don't have to use any one person's name.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I might need to do a little bit of digging in to see what's really going on. But yeah, I think I'm glad you brought that up. That confidentiality is a key point.
Yeah, good. And of course, another key principle with all of this is have these conversations with your team. So again, I'm a manager who manages managers. Discuss with them this. Hey, I want to be clear about lines of communication here. I want to talk about what a half open door policy looks like from my vantage point.
Yep.
And here is how I'm committed to handling this.
Yep.
If so, I want to keep my door open for people that report to you to come talk to me. And look, if they want to share something, I am not going to throw you under the bus. I might ask a question or two to understand what they're trying to say, but I'm either going to say, look, it's not me to handle. You need to go figure this out with your manager. Or if I do feel like something might be off there, I still am not going to problem solve with them. But I will maybe say something like, look, I'll look into it.
Mm-hmm.
And so just get on the same page with how that dance is going to work so nobody is caught off guard or there's any confusion about that. And then be willing to come back, when those situations happen, maybe be willing to debrief them with your other managers to make, course adjustments as you need it. But I think the trap that we often fall into is read my mind type of thing. Here is how I'm handling these situations, but nobody knows how you are going to be handling those.
Great. I think I actually forget to say what you just said in the workshops, and that's really key because that's so proactive. And it gets me and the people that directly report to me all on the same page, and it helps build trust between us. And I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've got I've got three related things, and the way I'm going to do this, Ethan, is I'm going to mention each to you, and you just shut me down if you want. That's another podcast kind of thing, or say yes, let's go there. Can I just
Okay. All right. Sure.
It's
It's a lot of power, but yeah.
yeah, you're in charge here, man. So what about the idea of skip level one-on-ones?
Yeah. Let's talk about those. Green light. Approve.
Green light on that one. So
Yeah.
it can be brief. Let's not get into one-on-ones in general, but I mean, my one-on-ones, my regular scheduled one-on-ones are with the person that directly reports to me, and those are happening monthly. And there's all these really cool things we're talking about, etc. Is there ever a time that I should skip level one-on-ones and have a conversation, intentional, scheduled conversation with the person who reports to the person that works for me?
Yeah.
What do you think?
What do you think?
Good try. Good one. Good one. I think they're a good idea with really tight boundaries, like really tight. For example, they should be super infrequent. And I mean like maybe annually, maybe twice a year. Like now again, we're not talking about chit-chatting or I got an idea or even me up as the upper manager checking in. Hey, how are you? How's things going? I'm not talking about that, but this scheduled intentional time, very infrequent. I'm not managing in these conversations. In fact, when things come up in those conversations that aren't mine, I say, oh, great. Have you talked to your manager about that? Oh, you definitely should talk to your manager about that. Right.
And they say, no, can you actually talk to them about that?
with maybe a few exceptions, I'm going to say no. That's
Nope,
really
not gonna do
something you
that.
should talk to your manager about, right?
Yeah.
Now, if they're bringing up something really big and horrible and there's problems like we've already talked about, you go through what we've already talked about. But yeah, in general, I'm not managing. They're very infrequent. It is a good time to show care about them and their development and maybe talk to them about exec team level stuff. This is the tricky part. There's nothing wrong with checking in on how things are going with your manager. How are things going in your department? What do you think your manager does well? What do you think their needs improvements are? I mean, seriously, that should not happen more than once a year.
Mhm.
But if you supervise someone who supervises someone, it's partly your job that they're doing it well.
Right.
And how are you going to know how they're doing it without occasionally checking in?
Right. Absolutely. I actually think that's such a key point that you should say it again. If you manage somebody that manages somebody, it's actually one of your key jobs to ensure that they're empowered and held accountable for being a good manager.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Are they practicing the top 15 management skills? And how do you know that they're practicing those? Now, I can kind of get a sense of how they're doing a couple other ways. I can know by the fact that I'm staying in contact with the manager, having one-on-ones all the time. I'm hearing what's going on with them. That gives me a clue how they're doing. I can do a employee engagement survey. Our Mind and Heart University app has those. We
Ooh,
can that was
nice.
a good plug
Yeah.
for that. You can do anonymous surveys, but yeah, occasionally check in and find out how things are going.
So there's some nuances with that, as with everything in life, right? But I'm curious. So if you're doing these skip level one-on-ones, just doing them yearly, and how are things going with your manager, with your team? What's going well? What would you like to see improved? And they're sharing things that they would like to see improved with their manager.
Hmm.
What's the response there in real time? Again, we got to be careful that we're not trying to necessarily problem solve that right there. But are because these skip one-on-ones they knew what they were coming, they knew what they were about. Like, are you basically saying, great, thank you for this information. I will go talk to the manager. Or still in that situation, are you saying, well, thanks for telling me what's going well, and then thanks for telling me what's not going well, but you're gonna have to go talk with your manager about what's not going well. You know what I mean? It's kind of
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because again, I don't know that we clarify that, or I don't clarify that very well in the training, but I will from now on. Thank you. It's two tracks. It's two things at once. It's both and. So because we know it's coming, it's happening. By the way, the manager who reports to me, this isn't a surprise to them. I'm not
Yes.
sneaking behind their back. They know it's happening, and it's a no part of our culture. Nobody should be worried about it. In fact, I tell the managers up front, hey, this skip level thing, I just want you to know if I have a problem now with something you're doing or not doing, you already know about it. So, I'm not going in there to fish for certain things, right? But this is a great way for me to get a sense of how things are going. And I'm going to ask for some feedback about you. And I will come back and give you a general idea of what I've heard. That'll be a good conversation for you and I in our one-on-ones. And so one of the tracks here is, yes, of course, I'm going to be listening to this stuff and gathering it in a general way, not reporting out what any person said, and the employees can know that it's confidential. But yeah, if 4 out of 7 employees tell me that the manager doesn't do one-on-ones, that's really important information for me. And I'm not going to say who said that, but I have some data, right? And if 5 out of 7 employees say they do wonderful staff meetings, we just love our staff meetings, man, I get to go tell the manager that good news. So I'm going to collect general information. And here's the other half of it.
Mm.
If I do hear something that's very specific and important that the employee needs to go work on themselves with their manager, I'm going to encourage the employee to go have those conversations. I'm not going to take their message for them as an individual and bring that to the manager.
Hmm. Okay. So it sounds like you're saying that it's kind of the same principles where you would still in that case say, hey, look at that. Like, let me look into that. And someone's going to follow up with you.
Yeah,
I
if
see.
it's a big deal, individual thing. Yeah, this person says to me, my manager, blew up at me and it really, caused me to shut down and I don't trust him anymore. And I get this story, and I've talked to them and I've tried. yeah, I would be willing to say, you know what, let me jump in and let me look into that for you, and someone will get back to you, that kind of thing. But
Hmm.
if it's more of a general, several people are saying they run terrible staff meetings, or several people are saying they don't ask for their input on decisions, that's not a crisis. That's a growth opportunity. And I'm
Hmm.
going to take that growth opportunity to the manager
Yeah.
and do some coaching and training.
So again, I'm hearing that even in these skip level one-on-ones, the general principles still apply, where I'm supporting my manager and I am saying, well, that's something for you to go talk with them about, or I'm communicating that I will look into this, somebody will follow up.
And the third option is I'm just listening and collecting. And I'm not, the employees know that I'm going to be bringing some very general information to the managers
Good.
as I collect, to the manager as I collect it.
Good. Very good. Yeah. The one last thing I want to say on skip level one-on-ones is something that you briefly touched on that I actually, in my view, I think is one of the most important pieces with this, which is setting the expectations around these skip level one-on-ones. They should never be a surprise. In fact, I would like to see teams communicate these skip level one-on-ones well in advance, like as a process. Hey, so annually between March and April, we are going to do these skip level one-on-ones. This is a chance for you to just talk with the director. We'll talk about your team. We'll talk about other things, and best case scenario, this is being communicated from those people's direct manager, right? So there's that kind of support for these one-on-ones.
Yeah.
But
United front. Yeah.
yeah,
The manager should never portray a vibe of this is bad or I'm scared or gosh, please be careful what you say. There should really be the sense that this is what we do here. This is how we maintain a really healthy organization and we trust each other.
good.
I had two more to throw real quickly. One is, well, actually, this one's super quick. It's just to say, boy, managers who supervise people who manage others, right? If you want to have fewer skip level issues, um, train your managers to be fantastic managers. Like
Hmm.
be proactive. Like bring in a consulting firm, maybe like I don't know, Nash Consulting. Train all your managers so that they're building psychological safety and they're taking feedback well and they're asking the right questions and they're having one-on-ones. See, the more your managers do that, the less likely that you're going to get skipped over because you're not meeting people's needs.
Yeah.
I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah. If the big pressing topic is how do we get better at handling these lines of communication so we're not throwing our managers under the bus, it's like, yeah, let's talk about some practices for that, but let's get down to the root cause of why this is even happening in the first place.
Yes.
Right? Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely. Good.
And then the last thing you can red light or green light, maybe a few words about the opposite direction on the org chart
Okay.
about going. Right now, we've been talking about employees skipping levels and going up. What about managers who skip levels and go down? We
Okay.
talked. Yeah, I guess we did talk about that sort of just now. We talked
Uh,
about skip levels, right?
yeah, but there's some let's add a little bit more color to that because yeah, I mean there's nuances such as I mean you and I have both seen this not infrequently of director passing tasks down 2 levels. The manager didn't know about that, and now it's a priority issue going on, causes
Yep.
some chaos in
Yep.
the system.
Yep. That's the main one right there. Just keep in mind that the org chart works both ways. And so, I have something I would like. Ethan, you report to me, and Scott reports to you. Let's say, I skipping you and going to Scott and giving him tasks. First of all, there's a double power differential there going on for Scott with me, and so he's wondering, well, can I push back on this? This guy's a director, and I guess I just got accepted, even though my plate's already full. you as his boss don't know I'm doing it, and you're the one that's supposed to be sort of air traffic controlling his workload so that he's not overwhelmed, right? And I didn't even give you a chance to
Yeah.
filter this.
Mm.
And so it can create all sorts of frustration and resentments. And so, again, if I need or would like someone that reports to you to help me out with something, who do I go to? I go to you, right? I ask you.
By me, meaning this person's. If you want to give a task or a job to someone 2 layers down from you, go talk to that person's manager about it. Make sure it works.
Yeah, yeah. And they could either give it to the task for you, or they can just say, yeah, go ahead. They've got some time. They might want to heads up the person. Hey, my boss is going to come to you and ask you to do this.
Yeah.
Come to me if you need me to help you, figure out how you're going to get that done. And then there's an exception to that, which I always have to say, you can actually have these pre-established channels, and
Yeah.
that's just something to keep in mind. So it just in the scope of our day-to-day work, this marketing person does a fair amount of marketing jobs for me, who's 2 levels up, right? But we've already established that, right? You as his manager and I have already worked that out, and it's all communicated and it's all fair game, and we just know that for these particular tasks I get to go directly to this
Yeah.
person.
Totally, totally. And this is the piece that people get all spun around on. Well, no, we're a flat organization. We gotta,
Yeah.
distribute tasks and this, having a layer in between it slows down our productivity. And it's like, I don't know, it's not you can have your flat organizations, right? The idea is that, like you said, you just talk about it. Hey, yeah, no, the director, yeah, they have freedom to talk to you about tasks in this particular area. That's the workflow. Those expectations are set,
Yep.
right? If it starts spinning outside of that area, yeah, be considerate of the manager and the employee. And so go through the lines of communication going down in that sense.
Yep. Little quick nuance on that. Where I see even organizations who get what we just said, here's where I see that kind of get sidestepped and create havoc. It's where, again, let's pretend that I am your boss and you are someone's boss. Let's say you are Lisa's boss. So I'm your boss, you're Lisa's boss. I need something done from your department, and you're out for the day. And so I go to Lisa. Now, there's nothing wrong with that in certain case, but what happens, I see this over and over again, is that thing that needed to be done did not need to be done today. But you weren't there those very
Mm,
second, the very second I had it on my radar,
mm,
you weren't there. So now I have a reason to skip level you and give this job to Lisa. Now you get back 2 hours later and, Lisa's frustrated and my excuse is, well, you weren't there. No, that's not fair.
right.
This was not a task that had a time stamp on it of 4 o'clock today. This did not need to be done today.
Yeah.
I was just trying to save myself some time, so again, maintaining these lines can take a little bit of self discipline.
Maybe let's end with this. If there are a few key nuggets, key principles that you want to make sure that our listeners take away from this, what would those be?
Have an open door policy for the people who report to you. Have a half open door policy using wisdom and discretion for the people who report to that person. There's one. If the thing that comes to me from 2 levels down is within the scope of the manager's job, I'm going to absolutely support that manager. I'm not going to do anything that looks like I'm managing.
Even if you might have handled that differently in their situation. It's not a matter of preference here, right? It's a matter of empowerment.
That's really good. That's a great way of looking at that. Yeah, even if I would have handled it a nuance different, or I would have said it that way or whatever, I have to not take their management authority or their autonomy away from them. I have to respect their role, and I have to help the employee respect their role.
Yeah.
Now, on the other hand, if what's coming to me is bad and my alarm bells are going off, hey, you know what? Someone's going to get back to you, right?
Yeah. Love it. Well, this was good. This was
Yeah.
good. Well, folks, if you are still listening to this episode, I would imagine that you're
People have
either,
tuned out by now.
yeah, there's probably two scenarios here. You're either asleep or this has been interesting to you and you've been finding some value in this episode. Hey, look, if you want to support us, honestly, the best way you can support the show is take like 10 seconds, open up Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and just leave us a quick review. Leaving us a review helps spread the word, helps other people find the show, and it'd do us a huge favor. So I appreciate that if you're moved to do so. And outside of that, tune in next time.
Hey, folks, wait. Don't go yet. Please, stay with me for 1 second here. I want to let you know about a couple cool little goodies that we have available for you. If you dig this podcast, you will probably also dig our Managing with Mind and Heart newsletter. This is a monthly newsletter where we share articles that we write about, hey, how to thrive as a manager, how to lead teams that are characterized by high morale, engagement, psychological safety, care and respect, collaboration, and high performance. You can sign up for this newsletter by texting the word leading to the number 66866. Additionally, you can go to our website and sign up for the newsletter there. Our website is www.nashconsulting.com. And of course, if you're not already aware, we have our cornerstone program for leaders and managers, and it is called Managing with Mind and Heart. Go figure. This program is something that we often bring into organizations to work with all their leaders on helping them get aligned and singing off the same sheet of music with best practice management skills and behaviors. We've brought this to hundreds of organizations at this point with really good results. And if you are not able or inclined to bring our program in-house, twice a year, in the spring and in the fall, we offer this 6-day Managing with Mind and Heart leadership development program online for anybody that would like to sign up and join us. To learn more about this online course and to register, you can go to our website. Once again, that's nashconsulting.com. Or send us an email at contact@nashconsulting.com. All right, that's all. That's it. See you later. Bye.